Good morning, and welcome to our first Wellness Wednesday for May of 2026. Oh my goodness, the year is just rolling by. For sure, I am Coach Crystal, and I will be sharing with you today. So feel free to uh, communicate in the chat or come off mute. Wait, raise your digital hand, your virtual hand, your real hand if you like to participate. This is interactive and this is for you. So today we're going to talk about boundaries and boundaries that protect your business. So one of the things I want to share is the fastest way to lose your edge um, in business is not a lack of talent, right? We all know what we need to do in our respective businesses, yet it's a lack of boundaries. And most professionals do not burn out because they are incapable. They burn out because they become too available, too interrupted, and too emotionally overextended to think clearly. Um, and in a business such as real estate that's built on relationships, responsiveness, and service, that can look normal for a long time. But how many of us can agree that normal does not always mean healthy? Right. So May is Mental Health Awareness Month. And there's no better time to tell the truth about what weak boundaries actually cost us, right? So, as we're talking about and thinking about our mental wellness, we want to talk about our mental wellness in relation to our business as well. So, what is it actually costing you? What is a lack of boundaries actually costing? It doesn't just cost time. It costs focus, it costs clarity, it costs emotional stability, and eventually, that lack of boundaries costs performance. So today, we're talking about boundaries not as rules or walls or even as rejection. We're going to talk about boundaries as one of the most practical and protective mental health tools available to high performing professionals such as yourself, right? And so I want to start with just a little grounding exercise. You know, we often rush into our day and go from meeting to meeting. And I know it's either, 7:30, 8:30, 9:30, 10:30 for you, depending on what time zone that you're in. But I want to just invite you to join me just for a simple grounding exercise. And, get comfortable in your seat, both feet on the ground if you can, and you're just going to take a few deep breaths, right? A slow, deep breath in through your nose and gently release it through your mouth, right? If it feels comfortable and safe for you to do so, you can also close your eyes or lower your gaze. And just do that a couple more times at your own pace. And as you do, right, ask yourself, what am I carrying mentally right now? Right. And then, also ask yourself, what feels heavy that I've been calling normal? Hmm. And as you take one last deep breath here in this moment, just meditate on those things. Maybe jot those down when we come back into the room. Just take a deep breath in and then release it. And when you're ready, open your eyes, come back to the room. Think about anything that came up for you during that, about those questions, and maybe even jot them down. Yeah, what feels heavy that you've been calling normal? Hmm. Okay. So thank you, Katie, for reiterating that. So May again is Mental Health Awareness Month. And one of the clearest signs of mental overload is not emotion, it is access. When everything can reach you at any time, and I know we've talked about this before, your nervous system never fully settles down. So if you're not taking breaks, if you're not resting well, right, you're not giving your nervous system an opportunity to rest and recover. So texts, emails, your notifications on your emails, your interruptions, emotional demands, and constant responsiveness, the brain puts the brain in a low grade state of vigilance, right? If you've always got your phone attached to your hand, never putting it down, never leaving it in another room, never having it, an arm's length away from you, that's something to explore. Boundaries aren't just about time management. Boundaries are also nervous system management. Okay. I'm glad, Martha. Yeah, right. You got interrupted. You allowed yourself to be interrupted. And how did that work for your Pilates workout? Thank you for sharing that. Right. And so let's talk a little bit about weak boundaries. Weak boundaries create hidden business costs, right? So weak boundaries, they rarely look dramatic, right? They look familiar. They look familiar. They look like answering messages during dinner. Yikes. Am I the only one that's been guilty of that? They look like saying yes when you know your calendar is already full, right? Weak boundaries look like letting urgency from other people, letting other people's urgency create an emergency on your part. And it overrides what really matters to you, right? Being reachable all day, mentally and mentally unavailable by evening, right? So that looks like what we've talked about near and dear to my heart is taking a lunch break in the middle of your day, taking a break in the middle of your day to rest and reset, right? The cost is not just exhaustion, right? The cost is slower thinking, more mistakes, shorter patience, right? When you're saying things like that client just really got on my last nerve, right? Lower quality decisions, right? And resentment in some of your relationships, right? Because you did not set the proper expectations and boundaries, and other people, if they don't know, they just keep operating in the same way. Okay. Any other comments or questions or feelings coming up around that? Okay. Now, I said weak boundaries. That does not equate to us being weak. Okay, so I just wanted to make that clarifying comment there. So what about boundaries as a business tool? Right, we're still talking about these boundaries that protect our mental wellness, and that is our mental capacity is also an indicator of the success of our business, right? So boundaries are not an emotional defense. You can look at them as an operational system, right? Think about when you think about your lead generation, right? We're told to protect that, right? To set up a bunker or set up boundaries around that time so that we make sure that is getting done as our one thing. Strong boundaries create predictability, right? So if you've got a certain amount of time to do a certain thing, that's predictable. Your lead generation, for example, is predictable. Your wellness practice, your movement, the way that you eat, that should be predictable, right? There should be boundaries around there. And what does that look like or sound like? Um, and these boundaries are not separate from business success, right? They support it. That looks like saying, I return calls between this time and this time. I return calls during these hours. How many of us have something set up like that? Or that I'm unavailable after this time, right? If you have, if family is a top priority for you and you say, I'm not available after 5 p.m. because that time is reserved for my family, are you holding that boundary there? I can do that. And I would like to call this the yes and when somebody asks you, right? Yes, I can do that, but not today, right? Let's schedule a time to make that happen instead of trying to squeeze it in. Okay. Clear expectations reduce stress for everyone involved, right? So I know we've talked also before that we don't like saying no. We don't like to tell people no, right? We want to make sure everybody's happy. We want to make sure that we keep those clients happy, right? So they don't leave us or speak ill of us, right? So what are some practical tools? And we'll get more into this as we go through the month, but what are some practical tools for protecting your boundaries, right? So here's 3 that I came up with. And then if you have some, feel free to share there. And I kind of alluded to this before. Having office hours, right? As real estate professionals, the what I call an underlying unspoken truth or myth, it's not a truth, but an underlying unspoken habit is that we are on all the time, that we have to be available 24/7. And that's just not true. So if you adopt office hours for your real estate business or any other business that you may be a part of, right? That helps. So you define when you're available and when you're not. And that's okay. It's okay to say no, and it's okay to protect your boundaries. And then preparing a boundary script, right? So what will you say when somebody tries to cross your boundary? Right? Like the yes and method. Yes, I'm happy to do that. I'm happy to help you with that. And this is when I can do it. Right? Or it might even be, it might be even you flat out saying, no, I can't do that because I have these other obligations and I won't be able to fully commit to what you're asking me there. And then doing a mental load audit. So on a weekly basis, you want to look back during that planning time, during that me time, that quiet time, right? And you want to ask yourself, what's draining me that I could either delegate, delay, or decline, right? What are the things that came up in my world that when I look back on those, I was like, you know what? I didn't even have to do that. I had an opportunity to say no and I chose not to. And now this is the consequence. Yet going forward, I'm learning from that and I'm moving forward and I'm making a different choice, right? So mental health is not only protected by rest, it's also protected by structure. We want to make sure that we set ourselves up for success so that we don't fall into that burnout and that mental overload. Okay, so delegate. Yes, ma'am, Martha. So you want to delegate it, you want to delay it, or you want to decline it, right? Is it yours? It goes back to that question before. What are you carrying that isn't yours to carry, right? What are you carrying that isn't yours to carry? And so when you're asking yourself that question, when you're looking back over your week, what did I take on that wasn't mine to take? Right? What did I take on that wasn't mine to take? Right? What feels heavy that I'm calling normal? What felt heavy to me this week that I'm calling normal? Okay. Comments, questions before we wrap this up. Okay. All right. So you want to protect the mind that builds the business, right? When we talk about mental health and mental wellness, it's all about and this is my term, right? thinking about what you're thinking about. It's all about interrogating the thoughts that are running through your head. When it comes to setting boundaries, what story have you created that tells you that you have to be available 24/7? Right? What story have you created that tells you that it's not okay for you to take time for yourself, to take care of yourself physically, mentally, emotionally? Right? Interrogate those thoughts that are going through your head about these things. Interrogate the thoughts that you have around your boundaries, and how are those thoughts and those weak boundaries or the lack of boundaries impacting your business? If you had strong, consistent boundaries that you were holding in your business, how might your business look different? Or how different might your business look based on that? Okay. If your mind is overloaded, your business will eventually reflect it. It will reflect it in missed meetings, missed appointments, right? Because you're not managing your boundaries. You put too much on your calendar, maybe overbooked yourself there. And so this month, as we talk about and think about mental wellness and we talk about boundaries, I challenge you to be intentional and proactive about setting up these boundaries and enforcing them, right? Don't wait until exhaustion forces a change, right? Don't wait until you are at your wit's end, if you will, to say, you know what, I have office hours. Like, you know what, don't call me after this time, or I'm gonna choose not to answer the phone. Where you're saying that out of frustration and exhaustion versus it being a model and a way that you set yourself up to live, right? So you want to choose it now. You want to choose it now, right? So when I've said before, um, you're either going to choose by not choosing self-care and well care now, you're choosing sick care later, right? Because eventually your body is going to break down. It's going to take what it needs if we continue to choose not to be proactive about our mental and physical wellness, right? So your challenge this week is simple, and this month, right? Think about the areas where you've picked up things that don't belong to you, or you have a boundary that in your mind you want to enforce, and yet somehow it hasn't quite come to fruition. Think of that one clear boundary. Set one clear boundary, whatever it is, that will help you um, maintain your mental wellness, that will help you maintain your boundaries, that will help you prevent burnout, right? And then you want to communicate it clearly, right? Because like I said a moment ago, right, we have these boundaries in our head. Okay, let me talk about me. I have these boundaries in my head, right? And then somebody crosses the boundary and I get annoyed, frustrated, upset, whatever the adjective is you want to use. However, I haven't communicated it clearly. So when I'm doing that reflection time of what happened, right? I can't fault somebody or be mad at somebody for crossing a boundary that they weren't aware was there, right? So think of it as an example when you have the crime tape or the caution tape, right? You can clearly see it. It's bright yellow, it's got black writing on it, and you know not to cross that boundary, right? So in my mind, I've created this caution tape. I've created this boundary. However, it only lives in my mind. I have not expressed it or communicated it to other people or to people that need to know it, and they cross it, right? They had no idea there was tape there. They had no idea that there was a boundary line there. So now I'm looking at them some kind of way because they've crossed this boundary, and they're looking at me some kind of way like, what are you talking about? Right? So communication is key in protecting those boundaries. And once you identify what that boundary is going to be, right? And this is just a starting point. So you want to evaluate where in your world you need to strengthen your boundaries or incorporate boundaries, right? And then you want to communicate it. You want to let everybody know. You want to set the expectations. I tell people all the time, my name is Crystal, but I don't have a crystal ball, so I can't read mine. So if you don't tell me what you're thinking about, then, or what your expectations are, then I don't know. And so coming from that vantage point, people can't read your mind. And so they don't know what expectations you have or what boundaries you have around your personal space, around your business, around your life. So you've got to communicate it. And then once you do, hold it without apology, right? You don't have to apologize because you created boundaries that are going to help you be successful. You don't have to apologize because you've created boundaries that are going to protect your peace and your mental wellness, right? Or your physical wellness. I think, Martha, you were sharing about your Pilates, right? What boundaries did you set around that for people that would have allowed someone to know that that was a protected time, right? So thinking about those things. One boundary can protect your peace. One boundary can restore your focus. One boundary can protect the mind that your business depends on. What is that boundary? So as we move through the month of May, we want to talk about that. Let your boundaries become the strategy that protects your mental health and your success. Questions, comments? Okay. You're welcome. So thank you for joining us for another Wellness Wednesday. We will have two more Wellness Wednesdays where Coach Katie will bring us some more practical ways of protecting our boundaries, of protecting our mental wellness for the success of our business. If you need either of us, you can reach us. I think if Ina can put our information in the chat for us, you can reach out via email or text. You can communicate with us in the Wellness Community Facebook group. And we're here to support you, whatever that looks like, right? If you desire or need, would like to have a one-on-one conversation about your specific needs, feel free to reach out to us. Otherwise, have an amazing rest of your day, and we will see you next week. Have a great day.